Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. So, have you got a Nextbase Dash cam, specifically the 212, and you've noticed that you keep losing the time and date? Now, this is the one I use in my vehicle. I've noticed this over time, so basically got on to Nextbase customer support. They're brilliant down there. You know, if you have any problems, get straight in touch with them. I'll put all the details in the comments. So basically they sold me a battery for £10 and I thought I'd do a video just showing you how simple it is to replace this battery. And yeah, so let's take a look. Right then, so the first thing I thought we'd do is look inside the vehicle. So there's my dash cam mounted, obviously hardwired in, so hardwired straight off the ignition. So if I just turn on my ignition and then we take a look at the camera, you'll see obviously once it boots up, it shows the time and date across the bottom. So as you can see, mine says the first of the first 13, and obviously the clock has gone to all zeros. So it's just not saving the time and date due to the internal battery inside the camera itself. So what I'm going to do is just remove the camera out of the holder and take it to my bench and strip it down. So here's the camera. It's quite simple. I'm going to obviously, you should be able to boot it up. When it's removed, it should run off the internal battery, but as you can see, it's completely dead. So that's a good sign there that my battery has failed. So yeah, so quite simply, that's it. So this is what the new battery looks like. If I just grab hold of it for you. Now it's got the information on you if you wanted to try and get one yourself. I did have a good look through the internet, but to get one the same size and dimensions was near impossible. I could get the same obviously rated battery, but I had issues with obviously the actual sizes, and I wanted to make sure it fitted. So this little sock here came over the positive lead. I'm guessing it's just there to stop them touching in transit. So when we actually fit the battery, you discard this little sock. And yeah, that's what the battery looks like. So here's what you're going to need. So obviously a soldering iron, some solder. I've got a positive and obviously a negative screwdriver, and some solder mop, just to mop up any excess solder that happens to be on the circuit board. Now obviously the first thing we got to do now is remove the main 4 screws for the actual housing. Now one of the actual screws, which is this one by here, is covered over by a sticker, which obviously tells you that any problems you basically void in your warranty. Now if your camera is under warranty, I do advise you send it off to Nextbase and they'll do this for you. But if it's out of warranty and you want to save yourself a few quid, it's just easier to do it yourself. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to remove them 4 screws. I've speeded this up a little bit just to make it a little bit less painful. And yeah, we'll get the 4 screws out of the main housing. You don't need to save that sticker. At the end of the day, you're not going to keep it in one piece. It's going to rip to pieces when you peel it back to get to the screw. So that's it. We'll pull the 4 screws out and get the case open. And there we go. So once we get that, we're going to get the flathead screwdriver then, and basically, oh sorry, I nearly forgot, we've also got to remove the SD card. Obviously that'll get in the way when we try to split the casing, so make sure you probably take that out first, but I forgot, so we're all human. So I'm going to take a flathead screwdriver now and just separate the casing. Now always start on the side where the buttons are. It separates a lot easier than the other side, so you can get it raised and then you can just wiggle it about to get it open. The side where it actually mounts is quite tough. I don't know why, it's just the way it is. So if you just give it a wiggle and a pull, you'll find it grabs on quite tight. So there's some quite tight clips there. But you'll see if you just get a screwdriver in there, once you've got it up like that, give it a pop and it'll just pop open. And there she is. So now the next thing we're going to do is remove the 4 circuit board screws. So there's 1 screw in each corner of the camera. So if we just pick it back up, and if you have a look in each corner, If we just hinge it up like that, you can see there's 2 screws obviously at the bottom there, 1 in each corner, so we'll just take them 2 out first. I'll just speed this up again for you just to make it a bit quicker. And then what we're going to do is drop the screen and pull it down a bit, and then you'll get to the other 2 screws. And there's the 3rd one. And the 4th. So once we got to that, then we got to take the circuit board out of the main casing. Now basically what you need to do is pry it up on the button side of the circuit board, because what it is, the actual port for the USB port, they actually stick into the casing, so you need to just basically lift the circuit board and lift in, and obviously basically upward out of them ports. So when you lift it up, it slots out, and you can see that USB port where my thumb is there obviously needs to slot out of the casing. So once we got that, then there's the battery. Now the battery is actually double-sided sticky taped stuck down to the casing, so we just take a screwdriver and pry the battery away from the casing. There's no screws or nothing, it's just a bit of sticky tape that holds it in place. So just get that out of your way, and there she is. And you can see that tape on the back. Right, so we get in here now with a soldering iron, and I'm just going to pull on each of the cables and just warm the solder slightly where the cables go to the circuit board until the cable just pulls away. So I'm just going to warm it up, warm the solder until it pulls, just like that. That's the negative, and I'm going to do the same with the positive. Whatever happens here, you want to make sure you don't touch, when the cables are attached, you want to make sure you don't touch the 2 ports at the same time, because you will short them out if there is any life left in the battery. And obviously when you're putting the new battery on, you need to take that into account as well. But so this is my solder mop. Now this stuff is brilliant for getting rid of any excess solder that's sitting on top of the circuit board. So I'm just going to hold it on. Now it just happens on the positive side, when I took it away, it took most of the solder with it. On the negative side, I've got a big lump of solder that's a bit odd shaped, so I'm just going to remove it down, and then I'm going to put 2 blobs of new solder and then resolder the cables back on. So the first thing I'm going to do now is obviously put a little bit of solder on my soldering iron and just basically blob it on the circuit board where them 2 contacts go. So first on the positive, you can see I just put a little lump there, and then on the negative. Now I think I haven't got enough solder on here, so I'm going to have to put a little bit more on to do this. Yeah, just a blob. You don't want too much, but you don't want, whatever you do, you don't want these 2 blobs of solder to touch each other. You want them separate. So just going to blob 2 blobs there, and that's it. Now I'm going to take again a bit of solder on my soldering iron, and I'm going to put a little bit of solder on the ends of each cable. So basically it just makes them stick so much better, because then obviously you're just soldering the 2 bits of solder together, not worrying about it penetrating the cable, because obviously it'll already penetrate the cable now. So this is just the way I do it, guys. So obviously if you have a better way of doing it, that's up to yourselves, but just thought I'd show this. So there we are. So now we have the cable with the solder on it, and obviously the circuit board. So I'm just gonna get in there and solder this in place. Now obviously I don't want to get in the way of the camera, so you can see what I'm doing. And there we go. So I'm just gonna put that on top of the blob of solder and just basically gently touch it with a soldering iron, and it should melt the 2 bits of solder together, which is obviously the solder on the circuit board and the solder on the cable, and that's soldered solid. Always give them a good pull, guys, just to make sure that they're obviously nice and tight. The last thing you want to do is it to pop off. But once once it's all soldered and it's all soldered in there and it's put in there, nothing's going to touch these cables. They're going to stay in one place, and yeah, a little bit of vibration, but that's about it. So just give them a little tug just to make sure that they're on there nice and tight. And to be honest with you, soldering them sideways like this, you have to bend the cables up to get them into the body. So obviously if they don't come off, then you know you've done a good job. And there it is. So that's my 2 cables soldered, and now it's ready to put the camera back together. Now I just wanted to show you again, obviously this adhesive or double-sided tape that was on the old battery, which obviously the new battery hasn't got. I did stick my finger in there and you can feel that there isn't much stickiness to the old piece of sticky tape. So what I decided to do was, rather than using sticky tape, use a bit of all-purpose silicone. I guess anything that holds the battery in place will do the job, but I prefer silicone because I find it molds to the shape and holds it nicely. So what I did was yeah, so just one other thing as well, when you wire the new battery up, you might notice that the camera actually turns on. So obviously just the furthest button on the end near the light, just press and hold that button to shut down the camera. Just the last thing you want is something shorting out while you're working on it. I didn't notice till I lifted it up that it was actually powered up as soon as I connected the new battery, which is a good sign. So a little blob of silicone on the back of the battery, not too much, just, you know, enough to hold it in place. So as you can see, just a little bit in the middle. And then what we'll do is we just tuck the battery in, make sure the circuit board's out the way, and just hook it into place, and then just push it tightly into the housing so you know it's nice and secure. Once you assemble the camera, it just holds itself together, so you haven't got to worry about it being perfect. If you haven't got the battery in the right place, you won't get the circuit board in. This is why I do believe that you have to use the right battery, and for the sake of £10, it's just better to go with the genuine one. Now see these 2 ports now, these have to locate into the casing. So what you've actually got to do is tip the circuit board onto an angle and locate them 2 ports, and obviously push the circuit board down in, give it a bit of a wiggle, and once you get that into place, you can then hinge the circuit board in. So we'll just push it down, and then there's some grooves then that locate into the circuit board. So once you get it in, oh, there you go, you can see she slid in nice and flush there. And then if you look at the top of the circuit board where the buttons are, if I just wiggle it, it'll just slot into place, and there's a couple of slots there that locate into the circuit board. Now something I did notice is I trapped my red power cable where the screw hole is. Something simple, but I would normally edit something like this out, but I thought it was good to show you, so that if you do the same, just make sure you lift the circuit board back up and just tuck that cable in nicely, obviously away from the circuit board. Something I did, you know, these things happen, so I thought best to show you. The last thing you want to do is go and put a screw straight through your new power cable, because that could cause all sorts of problems. So that's it in. So that's it. So let's get our screws back in. We'll just screw the circuit board back into place. And again, I'll zoom this up for you again to make it a bit quicker. Just again, 4 screws, 2 above the screen, and then flip the screen over, and then the other 2. That's the 4 screws in, and then what we do then is relocate the actual face with the screen. It just clips in, so just get it kind of located into the casing and give it a good squeeze. I know I was a bit worried about it not lining up properly, but once you get it in place, you'll feel it. It's quite simple. And it is a bit tough by that mount. It's quite tough to click in, but I just clipped it into there first and then worked my way around with my fingers, just clipping it all the way around. So once you get it in, there she is. You just go around and clip it in. And there it is. Once you get him all clipped in, then it's just a matter of putting the 4 screws back in. and that's it. You're all done. So once I get all this put back together, I'll just show you obviously that it works. So what I'm going to do is just power it up, and you'll see if I put the SD card in first. Doesn't like working without that. And then once we get the SD card in, I'm just going to power it up. And then what I'll do now is I'll just set the time and date in the menu. I'll skip past that. You don't wanna, I'm sure you can manage that yourselves. As you can see, is 1 bar of battery, so you know it's got enough to power up. So I'll just set the time and date, which I've set to today. And then if I go onto there now, you can see the time and date is all correct. So I'll power it down. Now obviously before, as soon as you powered it down, you lost everything, so I'll power it straight back up, and there it is, the time and date as it should be. Bang. Brilliant. So that's what we were hoping for. So yeah guys, it's that simple. Like I said, if you don't want to tackle this yourselves, you can always send it away. Nextbase have a brilliant customer service, so I'll put all the details down in the description, and yeah, thanks for watching.